Scaling with Scrum-of-Scrums. Hi, I'm Jay Charles from AGILEST. Of the various Scrum methods in current use, the Scrum-of-Scrums SOS is the most popular and commonly used way to scale Scrum. You may not have heard of it as a scaling method, but that is what it is. What is Scrum-of-Scrums? Starting with a brief introduction, Scrum-of-Scrums is a scaled Scrum technique for integrating the work of multiple small teams, often Scrum teams with usually 5 to 9 members on each team working on the same project, program, portfolio, or management group. It allows teams to communicate with each other to ensure that the value, product, software, service, output of each of the teams integrates well with the output of the other teams, and especially in areas where there is overlap or the sequencing of events, knowledge sharing is important. The teams that are leveraging the Scrum-of-Scrum structure do not necessarily need to be using Scrum, but every framework that scales Scrum leverages a Scrum-of-Scrums in some form, although some frameworks that leverage a Scrum-of-Scrums use different terminology for the same functions and events that are used in a Scrum-of-Scrums. The Scrum-of-Scrums structure is extremely lightweight and highly flexible, but depending on how a Scrum-of-Scrums is operated, it can vary from being highly effective to not effective at all. So now that we have briefly introduced what a Scrum-of-Scrums is, we will quickly address what the primary purpose of Scrum-of-Scrums is. The short answer is that it is a way to convey information that is needed about work details to keep the value of what is being developed by multiple teams aligned to efficiently achieve a common objective. What are the problems encountered with large-scale development that are helped by a Scrum-of-Scrums? Many problems can arise with large-scale development. Among the most common problems are subteams or separate Scrum teams going in different directions, and insufficient dependency management between the teams. Even when the development teams, Scrum teams or others, are internally well organized and work effectively, work outputs can have serious problems. No matter how good a team is at delivering work, if they are not doing the correct work, the output of the team is not what is needed and will require rework that could have been avoided. Quality can be measured in many ways, but for the sake of this description, I'm breaking quality down into 2 types: technical quality and fit-for-purpose quality. Fit-for-purpose quality is what breaks down when communication between teams either does not exist or is ineffective. The other major problem that is common when consistent, effective communications between teams is not present, as referenced at the start, is dependency management issues. Dependency management issues can manifest in 2 major ways. First are integration issues. The components from different teams don't work together properly, leading to avoidable rework. The other problem is the late discovery that a dependency exists, leading to delays. That starts to answer the question of why Scrum-of-Scrums is used so much. The simple answer is because Scrum-of-Scrums is both effective and efficient. But ultimately, it has to do with the fact that when teams adopt Scrum, they find that they're getting better results than they did in the past. So adopters end up sticking with it, and then they extend the goodness to other teams. I've been a project manager, Scrum Master, product owner, program manager, and then working in a consulting capacity for close to 20 years as a principal director at Accenture and managing director at AGILEST. Over and over, when working with customers to help them implement Agile methods, I would be told we would not be scaling. Something that I want to address, especially for those who have not worked at a company IT department with over 500 people, is that at these companies, before they adopted Agile methods like Scrum, the teams were difficult to maneuver, and the idea that being so quickly adaptable that they would need to coordinate more quickly than once a quarter seemed like science fiction to them. But more frequently than not, when I was able to get my customers to adopt Agile methods properly, they had an awakening, and we started coordinating the teams with scaling methods. Then, because when the larger organization sees from empirical evidence that there are measurable benefits resulting from coordinating their development teams, This then would lead to the adoption of Scrum or other Agile methods on additional teams with scaling in other parts of the company, which always requires a Scrum-of-Scrum pattern somewhere in the mix to keep the work aligned. What are the benefits of leveraging a Scrum-of-Scrums? When the right people are included, participants get the knowledge sharing that they need, which results in a reduction of information gaps and, collectively, less time spent in meetings. When followed correctly, teams leverage Scrum-of-Scrums to coordinate the efforts of multiple teams and more quickly see where the work is diverging and make corrections to stay aligned, resulting in reduced rework. A major benefit that comes from holding a Scrum-of-Scrums is reducing the overall amount of time spent in meetings. It is instead intended to replace some of the meetings that people are attending. Meeting overload is a major problem in organizations because the more time you spend in meetings, the less time you have for the actual work. But we cannot function effectively without a continuous flow of needed information. One of the biggest problems with most meetings that are conducted at most organizations is that they are not conducted in a way that facilitates flow. Rather, meetings are usually scheduled in a way that gets in the way of flow, facilitating a needed flow of knowledge resulting in efficient flow from and to the teams who need a shared understanding of development details. Conducted with efficient meeting structures can reduce the overall time that participants collectively spend in meetings by creating consistent flow of the information that everybody needs at the times that they need it. So, what are the reasons for leveraging the Scrum-of-Scrums? We can always just have a meeting, right? If a one-off meeting will solve the communications issue, then don't set up a Scrum-of-Scrums. But when work efforts are ongoing and require the effort of more than just one team, it is important to establish a cadence for keeping critical information available to all of the participants. But unlike coordination meetings held in organizations where there has been no progress since the last meeting, leading to the participants asking questions like, why do we even have these meetings? And we could just send out our progress report in an email. But in an agile environment where work is broken down into smaller units of work and progress happens much more quickly, it is important to have frequent short meetings to coordinate work because it facilitates being able to make the adjustments that lead to developing value that accurately aligns to what is needed. One of the foundational principles of Agile is to minimize waste, and if we have more meetings than we need, we create waste. If we don't have enough meetings to maintain alignment across participating teams, we create waste in the way of rework, dependency delays, and other wastes. But we don't want to have more meetings than we need to stay aligned. So getting the balance right is important. Another kind of waste is what results from setting up alignment meetings one by one. When we follow an ad hoc cadence, we will meet when we need to. We are then required to go through the effort of setting up meetings and everything that is involved with that process over and over. Anyone who has set up meetings among several people in an organization knows that finding meeting times when everybody can meet can be difficult and time-consuming. If you contrast that with setting up a Scrum-of-Scrums that has a set cadence, that time is then blocked in everyone's calendar, and it is easier over time for all of the participants to attend. But there is a deeper problem with an ad hoc meeting cadence for team leaders in an ongoing program. And that is that we don't get into a rhythm. Just as with Scrum, having a set cadence will deliver better results. Determining what is the best cadence for our work is something that we discover from running Scrum-of-Scrums meetings. This will lead to what is the best balance for the type of work that we are doing. We want to strike a balance that supports our development flow by removing information bottlenecks and keeping us aligned at the pace of our development, but not so frequently that we are not benefited by having the information flow any faster. So it is important for our Scrum-of-Scrums meetings to have a cadence that is adjusted based on what we learn we need by operating. There are many reasons for having a Scrum-of-Scrums to keep teams aligned. And you don't need all of the reasons for it to make sense to leverage a Scrum-of-Scrums. Typically, it starts with having work that requires more effort than a single team of up to 13 can deliver, within the needed time frame, so work needs to be divided into multiple teams to achieve the needed capacity. So the additional points are multiple teams are working concurrently to develop a single product. Multiple teams are working concurrently supporting a single portfolio. Multiple teams need to share resources. An organization needs to load balance work of different types across multiple teams. So these are some of the many reasons. There are, of course, many more than this, but these help to give you a foundation for what are the possible reasons that we might include or move forward with having a Scrum-of-Scrums. Scrum-of-Scrums for efficient long-term communications. It may seem redundant to address this again, but it is important that it is understood because often it is overlooked, even when it has been made visible. Leveraging what are referred to as scaling methods are not just for organizing more people together to build big things. It is also a way to create an efficient communications pathway that helps to break down silos. Not every detail of what everyone in an organization is doing needs to be shared because that would create an information overload situation. But communicating the big ideas and big challenges will create a much more efficient overall organization. When high-level corporate roadmaps are known to all of the participants and a "we are all in it together" attitude is supported, solutions are freely shared and both innovation and value creation is faster and more impactful in positive ways to the companies that embrace it. A highly visible example of this is how internally at both SpaceX and Tesla, knowledge is shared openly and continuously contributing to fast and effective innovation, not just in each of the companies, but across the two organizations. An example of the positive results that have come from this has been switching control surfaces in SpaceX rockets from traditional hydraulic systems to motorized systems that leverage the motors developed by Tesla for automobiles. This has resulted in better performance and lower cost for rocket development. And there are many other examples of where the commingling of technology as well as goals and timelines has enabled each of the companies to become industry leaders in each of their respective areas of focus. How to determine if we should set up a Scrum-of-Scrums. Here are questions we need to ask. Do we have ongoing work that requires a continuous delivery of value that exceeds what can be accomplished by a single team? Is the work simple enough not to require ongoing engineering, or is it complex? Do ongoing team dependencies exist? Do we have rework that results from integration issues between the outputs of the teams? These questions are not expected to be comprehensive, but rather to get the conversation started, which should seed the brainstorming process to find the best ways to leverage Scrum-of-Scrums for your particular situation. Also keep in mind that cadences for Scrum-of-Scrums can range from daily to once per week, with the expectation that the frequency will be adjusted based on the observed needs, and that adjustments to fit that are needed will be discussed in the team retrospectives. The perfect balance for your Scrum-of-Scrums cadence is something that is discovered. But you need to start the process and then learn from the results that you achieve what the perfect balance is for the specific work that you are engaged with. How does a Scrum-of-Scrums work? Scrum-of-Scrums is a scaling technique for integrating the work of multiple Scrum teams that are usually 5 to 9 members on each of the teams working on the same project. It could be a project, portfolio, program, or working for the same product manager or program manager that is facilitating the work from multiple areas. It allows teams to communicate with each other to ensure that the software output of each of the teams integrates well with the output of the other teams, and especially in areas where there is overlap or the sequencing of events is important. There are different forms and uses of Scrum-of-Scrums, but the most basic form leverages a Scrum Master who acts as a representative for the Scrum team that they support, coming together with the Scrum Masters from other teams that all draw their work from a common backlog, portfolio, program, or program manager. Each of the Scrum Masters will give information about what their teams are specifically working on and what they have completed, and what they are focused on getting done before the next Scrum-of-Scrums meeting. They will tell the others if the team that they are supporting has any current or anticipated challenges or cross-team dependencies that they feel need to be addressed. Each of the Scrum Masters is expected to be listening intently to determine how their team's work will be affected by the other teams, including dependencies that they have on other teams, and if they can support the other teams in terms of providing work capacity, or the skills that their team members have that can support a knowledge gap that exists on another team. Again, this is just one of the possible forms of many possible structures for leveraging the Scrum-of-Scrums. Who participates in Scrum-of-Scrums meetings? The most basic structure includes a representative from each of the teams. And if the teams are Scrum teams, then most likely it will be Scrum Masters from each of the teams that are being represented. It is also common for a Scrum-of-Scrums meeting to have a specified leader, who may be a senior Scrum Master, but the title of the role can vary. What is important is if it is needed, it exists, and that the responsibility for the leadership role are understood. If each of the Scrum teams has Scrum Masters who are self-managing and work together with Scrum Masters from other teams, then there may not be a need to have a separate leader role. But for example, if you are operating in an IT context and you have a program manager who is a primary coordinator of work, then that person should be participating in the Scrum-of-Scrums meetings because there is functional value in having them participate. Let us know in the comments below what your experience with this has been. If you are using a Scrum-of-Scrums, what title does the lead have? Or do you even have a lead? Some of the prescriptive frameworks like SAFe will be specific about their way of structuring the meetings and specify that the Scrum-of-Scrums meeting are led by a role called an RTE, a release train engineer, who is essentially a program manager. But unless you are specifically using SAFe, maintaining a more adaptable, what is needed approach will likely facilitate a better alignment with what your organization needs, yielding better results. If you are using SAFe or another scaling framework, let everyone know in the comments below what your experience has been like. What are the additional roles that should be included in a Scrum-of-Scrums meeting? Anyone from one of the teams who possesses essential information that will benefit attendees of the Scrum-of-Scrums meeting regarding the program or overall deliverables for which the Scrum-of-Scrums meetings are held to keep the work aligned should be included. This is especially true if the participant is uniquely capable of effectively communicating this information, or if they are expected to address specific questions that they will provide the best answers for. However, a key objective in managing Scrum-of-Scrums meetings should be to maintain the efficiency of these meetings to an adequate level. Everyone who attends should be participating. The more people that there are in a meeting, the longer the meetings will run. Scrum-of-Scrums meetings should not go past 2 hours. More shorter meetings will yield better results over time than fewer longer meetings. Let us know in the comments who the additional roles that attend your Scrum-of-Scrums meetings and how that affects the outcomes. Should Scrum Masters or team managers have their Scrum-of-Scrums meetings with the product owners? Including product owners in the Scrum-of-Scrums with the Scrum Masters can be an effective way for all participants to get knowledge that they need in an unfiltered way from each other. But if including the product owners in the same Scrum-of-Scrums leads to a group becoming too large for it to fit in a meeting that is less than 2 hours long, then the meeting for the Scrum Masters and the product owners should be held separately. As stated previously, shorter, more frequent meetings produce better long-term results as compared to long, infrequent meetings. Let us know in the comments how long your Scrum-of-Scrums meetings are, and if you have both your Scrum Master and product owners together. What about shared services or external teams? Should their representatives attend the Scrum-of-Scrums meetings? If work or components that shared services or external teams are responsible for delivering is critical to the larger deliverable success, then a representative should attend the Scrum-of-Scrums meetings. Something to keep in mind when thinking about the additional roles that need to be included is, will they provide a needed benefit in terms of information that is needed? A pushback that I frequently get, especially from shared services or external teams, when we have asked them to attend Scrum-of-Scrums teams meetings, is that they are not agile. So this work does not fit their process. From my experience, this does not matter. Of course, it would be better if they were actually Scrum teams or teams that aligned with the same kind of cadences. But it's important to keep in mind that the reason that they should still attend is that if they can see what our teams are doing and the progress that they are making and what the teams are going to need supported and when, if they have that information, even if their processes don't support adaptation as effectively as the Agile teams, at least they know what the need is. It is up to them to then figure out how to accommodate that need. Let us know in the comments below if you have shared services or external teams representatives attending your Scrum-of-Scrums and what impact that has had on the work. Also, additional participants can be included temporarily. If you are only leveraging a shared service for a short period of time, then the shared service representative will only need to attend the Scrum-of-Scrums for the same period of time. Who should not participate in a Scrum-of-Scrums meeting? The chickens and pigs story is a good way to start this answer. The story goes like this. A chicken and a pig are talking about opening a restaurant, and the pig asks the chicken, "What should we call it?" The pig replies, "Ham and eggs." To which the pig replies, "No thanks, because you would be involved, but I would be committed." Put another way, the primary people who have skin in the game should be included in the meetings. Something to keep in mind is that efficiency, getting more done with less, includes not wasting people's time in the meetings that they don't need to be in. This is not to be confused with the need-to-know attitude. If someone does not need to be in a meeting, then they should not be. Let us know in the comments below how your Scrum-of-Scrums handles participants and what impact that has. There are many reasons that people who don't need to be in a meeting should not be. First, you are taking away productivity from the organization. Think about this example for a moment. If you have 10 people in a meeting who don't need to be there and would be contributing value to the organization in some way if they were not in that meeting, every 6 minutes that you have those people in the meeting, you've taken an hour of productivity away from the company. Not to rant on with this too much, but a very common problem is people being in more than one meeting at a time, and working remotely has amplified this. Let us know in the comments below if you have seen a problem with people who don't need to be in a meeting included just in case. Chickens. People who are not stakeholders should not be in the Scrum-of-Scrums meetings because they often move the meeting off course. When you have attendees who are not stakeholders, your meeting is not their primary focus. And often they will throw out half-baked ideas that create a distraction and unnecessarily extend the length of a meeting. I'm not wanting to imply that you cannot have chickens in your meetings. There are many times when you intentionally want external input to give the participants a different perspective. But when you include others in the meetings, it should be intentional. And you should have a reason that justifies their attendance. Let us know in the comments below about the positive or negative impact that the inclusion of chickens has had in your meetings. Running a Scrum-of-Scrums meeting. The coordination of teams supporting a common set of work, leveraging a Scrum-of-Scrums meeting structure, can be held daily, twice a week, or at a minimum, once a week. The biggest driver of frequency should be what is needed, which usually relates to the complexity of work. Higher complexity requires increased frequency, and the volatility of the requirements, i.e. working in a highly competitive environment, requires more frequent adjustments of the requirements, which in turn increases how frequently the alignment from the Scrum-of-Scrums meetings is needed. Each team is represented by a Scrum Master or designated team member who attends the Scrum-of-Scrums meetings as its representative. If the material that a particular team needs to discuss is highly technical, both the Scrum Master plus a technically qualified team member should attend if it will benefit the meeting participants. Let us know in the comments below how often and if you think the balance is working or needs to be adjusted.